Welcome back, crew. It's December, and that means we are diving into the thrilling Dragonbane RPG as our game of the month. And today, we're going to be going through what makes this system tick. We're going to be looking at the core non combat mechanics of the system, showing you how to resolve dice rolls, going over how the magic system works, pretty much everything that you need to know to run the non combat side of a Dragonbane adventure. Now, if you're worried about combat, definitely don't. We are going to be doing another video about the combat side, showing you how to handle damage, making attacks, cool additional actions you can take on your turn. All of that will be in our part two of the mechanics video, hopefully coming out tomorrow morning. But before we dive into this, I did want to give a shout out. We are going to be running our actual play of the Dragonbane RPG tomorrow, December 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on YouTube and the TJG channel. Definitely make sure to check the description. There'll be a link down there. Click notify me and come hang out with the crew as we put these mechanics to the test and have a fun adventure using the system. And as always, we'll be giving away a free PDF copy to one lucky viewer. So make sure you come through live and get a chance to watch this system, have a blast with me and the crew. Also, if you're watching it late, definitely go check out. There'll be a video on demand too, so you can still see how the system's played. But yeah, let's dive into it. So, as I mentioned before, Dragon Bane is an OSR style game, so the core non-combat mechanics are pretty straightforward. But we're going to take you through step by step, and especially with the magic system, because that's a little bit unique, especially when it comes to some of the OSR style games. So we'll focus a little bit there too, just to make sure you know everything that you need to know to run the Dragonbane adventure. But kick it off, we're going to be going through how to resolve dice rolls with this system. Luckily, pretty straightforward with that side as well. It is a D20 system, so that's going to be your core dice that you're rolling to resolve whether your actions are a success or a failure. Biggest thing that's going to be a change, especially if you're coming from D&D, Pathfinder, they got the usual big D20 systems, is you're flipping the success and failures. So as we mentioned before, they call a success a dragon die, but that's going to be on the nat 1. So your nat 1 is going to be your critical success. And what that's going to do is if you roll that, for non-combat stuff, you're going to succeed in whatever you're trying to do, but you're also going to get something additional, something extra. So similar to kind of a crit success in D&D, you may impress someone, you may do something quicker than you anticipated. Whatever it's going to be, is it's going to be what you wanted plus a little bit extra determined by the game master. Now, in combat, which we'll go over in the next video, the dragon dice gets additional that you can choose from to produce in combat. So it gives you a little extra oomph too for your weapon attack. So flip side of that is the nat 20. So you're gonna probably break your heart a little bit sometimes when you see those nat 20s coming up. They're gonna be a demon. They're gonna be a crit failure, and whenever those come up, something a little bit worse is gonna happen. Also with these two, if you do roll a demon, we're gonna go into these rules in a second. You can't push a roll. So if you crit fail it, that's the roll. There's nothing you can do to kind of make that roll better. So with that, uh, one of the big things too that we'll touch on, usually your roles are going to be tied to your skills. And we went over the skills in the character creation video. With these, to resolve your role, you're going to basically roll equal to or below your skill. So for our guy DW, we had him with lances of a skill rating of 14, I believe. So if we roll a 14 or below, we're going to have success on whatever we're trying to do. So that's the big thing to keep in mind with the system is you're going to be looking for your skills and trying to roll below those to determine if you're successful or not. Now you can also have some rolls targeted, as you see, to the base attribute. So if you went to that, you'd do like a strength roll, listing heavy. You'd kind of roll below your strength, so very similar. But luckily, most of your rolls are going to be tied to one skill or another. Sneak peek to the combat videos. Combat includes the same thing because weapons are just weapon skills, as we mentioned with our lance on that side. So rather than making a attack towards a target's AC, like you may be familiar with from other systems, you're going to roll against your own lance skill to see if it hits, and then once it hits, you get into their own armor and damage reduction, and so on and so forth, which will go in the combat make video. So fairly straightforward on that side. Big thing too, and this is something that's pretty much across the genre, but I do want to call out. They specify only giving one chance per skill for a role, we should say. So unless something changes, a new person attempts it, they try something completely different, you're only going to get one chance. And as they say to make sure that there's no standstills in the games. If not failing forward, at least make sure they're keeping the narrative moving with their skill checks. So with this boons and banes, another thing, if you're used to D&D, this is going to be fairly straightforward. Little straightforward, I should say. Boons are typically or advantages. So if you get a boon, you're going to roll the dice twice, but you're going to take the lowest result. So it's going to probably mix up your mind a little bit because it's almost like disadvantage, but disadvantage is good. Banes on the other side are disadvantage. You're going to roll the dice twice, but you're going to keep the highest result because low is good, high is bad in the system. I know that's going to tweak your mind a little bit, but once you get used to that feel, you'll definitely get in the flow of it. Another big thing with this too, very similar to D&D, so you can have multiple banes or boons as well. But the thing is, you just minus them out. So if you had two banes, three boons, you will just roll one additional d20 for the boon. So keeps it pretty straightforward there. Nothing too crazy. You won't have a huge amount of dice that you'll have to roll, and kind of keep the action moving. So one of these things, this is cool. I'm glad they brought that in. I love systems where you can push your roll, make the devil's bargain, whatever the system calls it, to succeed at a cost with what you're trying, or have a chance to succeed at a cost with what you're trying to do. And they bring it into Dragonbane with this. Fairly straightforward with this. Biggest things to call out is going to allow you to re-roll your roll. It must do a full re-roll. So for the instance we mentioned where we had one boon, we would have to re-roll with that full one boon. If we had one bane or two banes, same thing. You'd have to re-roll with those as well. And also, I should mention too, with the stacking of banes, a little bit different than 5e is you can stack those boons and banes. So if you did have multiples, you would have to roll all through those. But when it comes to pushing your roll, you make that full roll. But the biggest thing is when you decide to do that, is you have to choose a condition of your choice that your character gets as a result of kind of desperately going through and trying to accomplish whatever they were looking to do. Now, with these attributes, they are these conditions, they are linked to attributes. So like exhausted is to strength, angry is intelligence, so on. The big thing to note, this one I'm gonna have to go back and look at it myself, but it's not directly tied to it. So let's say if you were making a strength roll, you're trying to pierce somebody through with your lance and you wanted to push it, you don't have to necessarily take exhausted. You could say you're angry that you're failing so much that you kind of put your full fury into this. But the biggest thing is the game master has to approve, and it has to kind of be realistic. You can't just be like, hey, my guy doesn't have any charisma stuff. I'm always going disheartened. Make it make sense of the narrative, makes sense to what you're doing. But a couple things that go along with this is that you can continue to push rolls until you have all six conditions filled. I imagine hopefully you'll stop before you get to that point, but once you do have all six of the conditions filled, there's no way to double up on them. You're kind of out of pushing rolls at that point. But you can recover conditions by resting. But I'm glad they put this in there. I think pushing rolls and having these options for players to take a harm to themselves at the with the benefit of gaining what they're trying to do is just a really cool way to have some fun with the system. So, last big thing we'll go over on this part is opposed roles. So they do a little bit different on this one. I almost didn't cover it because I assumed it would kind of be the same style as other systems, but this one's kind of cool. So let's say you were arm wrestling another player character, and arm wrestling an NPC. Basically, what you guys would do is you'd both make your strength rolls, uh, but they're going to kind of figure out success and a kind of a little bit of a pattern here. So you're going to go through your strength rolls. You're going to see which or both of you, if you succeeded against your target value. Let's say for our guy, we've got a strength of 14. Re-roll, we get a 13, we succeed. The player we're arm wrestling against gets a 15, and they fail their strength roll. Game over. You succeeded. You got past yours. You're good to go. Now, if both players fail, they both fail. Then you can either roll again just to keep the narrative going, or you could say something happens to cause them both to fail. But now, if they both succeed, is where it gets interesting on this side. So, if they both succeed, you're going to look and see whose roll is comparatively lower. So, like, let's say in our instance, both have a 14 again, just to keep math easy. I roll a 6, the other guy rolls a 3. You'll kind of compare towards their target numbers and see which one is total overall lower than the other. So if you have a higher ceiling, that can help you out. But for our instance, since my guy is clearly lower or higher, I would lose that roll. It's kind of a cool way to get that in. But I mean, I want to see it play out at the table because I think sometimes I think a little bit longer than you expect, especially if you're at a virtual tabletop like where we're playing on Foundry. It'll automatically tell you if you're succeeded. Do some quick math against your the other player. If you both succeed, and it's easily resolved. Yeah, so that's kind of the core non-combat rules. As I said, in the next video, we're going to go through and show you how to do combat, damage, healing, dying, all the works. But the last big thing I wanted to touch on this video before we move on is magic. They've got a pretty cool magic system with the Dragonbane system. So we're going to kind of show you how that works, how those skill rolls go through, and just things to keep in mind. So if you watched our building a player character video, one thing I do want to remind you is all the magic skills are secondary skills. So for other skills, in case you're not trained in that skill, you can usually still try to attempt it and just roll that base chance. For the magic skills, if you're not trained with them, you don't even get a chance to roll. So you must be trained to do so. And typically, you can get access to magic through your class, or if you adventure and get experience, you can go through and kind of buy some level ups on that side to get that. But typically, it'll be through your class, and we'll kind of go through that aspect. So with the Dragonbane system, there's four different schools of magic. So animism, general magic, mentalism, as well as elementalism. So with those, each of them have their own skill as well. So typically, if you are getting into magic, you can pick one of the schools or try to have branches or skill or trained in all the different schools. Kind of depends on what you're going for with your character. But once you do pick your trained skill, you'd be able to go through and pick some spells relating to that trained skill. So with this, there's a couple different ways you can have your spells. You can either have your spells kind of within a grimoire, which you can kind of note them all down. But when you're preparing skills or preparing spells, I should say, they're going to be tied to your intelligence for the number that you can have within. So you can kind of keep those within your head and be able to kind of bust them out when the moment is needed. So with that too, you're gonna be able to go through and look at the casting spells pieces. So with this, these are gonna be tied to a skill roll as well. So same thing with these, you're gonna want to roll below whatever your skill is for the spell that you're looking to cast. Basically, if you let's say for easy numbers, you've got a 12 in elementalism, you're casting an elemental spell, you're gonna want to roll a 12 or less to be successful there. With that, after you cast the spell, typically, you're going to have between one to three kind of levels of spells that you can cast. So, a first level spell, or first rank spell, I should say, is usually going to cost two willpower points to cast, and then additional two for each rank up that you go from there. As well with this too, if you do ever run out of rank point or willpower points, you can use power from the body, which I thought was a really cool option to have in here, which would allow you to roll anywhere between a D4 or a D20, your choice, depending on how many willpower points you need to cast a spell. No matter how many you roll, they're going to be gone at the end of this turn. But whatever you roll on that side is also going to be taken out of your HP. So it's kind of a way you're harming yourself to get the spell off, which I think is a really cool thing to do. A kind of cool thematic thing to have in there. So if you're down in your luck, you know you need to get the spell off. You're out of willpower points. This could be the thing that turns the tide. So I thought that was cool there. And then also to note with those, you can't use them for healing spells. That would be a little bit of a gimme there. I'm going to use this to heal everybody and give myself a little bit of back of what I've lost, so I thought that was a fair way to do it. One thing to note as well too with this system, which I thought was kind of cool too, kind of brings some of that old school flavor back, is you're not able to wear metal or hold metal while casting. So you with that you couldn't have armor on, you couldn't have a metal shield, you couldn't have a spear, even things that may be like a spear that we have a wooden handle but a metal tip, that wouldn't be allowed either. If you are holding a weapon, it needs to be kind of a wooden weapon. So a staff, a club, something where there's truly no metal in there, because otherwise the spell will just be a failure if you try to kind of bring it into being. The last big thing they go over here too is just some of the elements that are part of a spell. So fairly similar to if you've played 5e, again, we'll pick on them. So you've got the word, the verbal component, you've got the gesture, the semantic component, you've got kind of the focus, kind of your spell casting focus. And if there's an ingredient, the material item on that side, you'll need to be successful in one or more of these, or have one or more of these present to be able to cast. And it depends on the spell that you're utilizing, which ones you need, or how many of them you need as well. But those are kind of a quick run through of both the adventure mechanics as well as the magic mechanics there. Wanted to give a quick overview of those just so you kind of see how those aspects play out and kind of see what you need to know for the table there. Definitely shout out in the comments too if there's any cool mechanics on the adventuring side that we didn't get a chance to cover here, or if you have any questions as well. But definitely make sure you guys come by tomorrow. We are doing our live actual play of the Dragonbane system at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So come through. Make sure to click on the link below and click notify me and get your chance to win a free PDF copy of Free League's Dragonbane game. Thanks for hanging out and the next time.